Have you ever changed your approach and immediately felt like a fraud? Maybe you changed careers. Maybe you've changed the strategies. Maybe you just stopped doing something that wasn't producing results anymore. Or maybe you just pivoted after pouring years of your life into a particular direction. And right in the middle of the decision, before you could even catch your breath, a question showed up uninvited. Am I adapting or am I just giving up? Because from the outside, these two things or those two things can look identical. But family, they could be more different. A few years ago, I had this belief that was costing me more than I realized. I believed that a commitment meant staying the course no matter what. That if I started something, I had to finish it exactly the way I planned it. No adjustments, no pivots, and of course, no detours. Because in my mind, changing course was just sophisticated word for saying, I'm done. I quit. Here's the problem with that belief. Reality doesn't care about your original plan. Projects change, business change, stakeholders change, technology change, and of course, life changes. And the more experience I've gained, not just in project management, but in living, the more I started noticing something about leaders that I really respected the most. They weren't the ones who refused to change direction. They were the ones who refused to abandon the mission while staying completely willing to change the method. Oh, I like that, family, because that's a different thing entirely. And the moment that clicked for me, it changed how I led. It changed how I built. And more importantly, it changed how I define commitment. Because commitment isn't refusing to change, commitment is refusing to abandon what matters. Think about that for a moment. How many people stay committed to a strategy long after the strategy has stopped serving the goal? Not because it wasn't working or not because it wasn't producing results, but because changing directions feels like admitting defeat. Sometimes what looks like commitment is actually stubbornness wearing a leadership badge. And that's where many people get stuck, not because of lack of discipline, not because of lack of talent, but because they mistake adaptation or adoption for surrendering. Principle number one, growth requires you to outgrow your old plans. One of the hardest truths about growth is that a person who created the plan isn't always the same person who eventually achieves the vision. When we first start something, we create a plan based on what we know at the time. But growth changes us. Experience changes us. Failure, phew, that changes us. And success, that changes us. And sometimes the very thing that got us started or got you started or got me started is no longer the thing that will get you where you're trying to go. Yet many people keep holding on to old patterns simply because they were the original plan. I can sit here and talk about old patterns all day, but today we're going to stay focused on today's episode because let me give you some background, family, of this reason why this lesson, why I want you to understand this lesson. Growth doesn't just require new skills. Growth often requires new strategies. And sometimes the greatest sign of growth is realizing you've outgrown the plan that once made perfect sense. I will say that again. Growth doesn't require new skills, it requires new strategies. And sometimes the greatest sign of growth is realizing you've outgrown the plan that once made perfect sense. Here's two actionable tips I'd love for you to experiment. Evaluate whether your current strategy still supports your long-term goal. Next one, give yourself permission to update your plan without feeling obligated to defend the original version. Here's my professional advice, family. Don't become so attached to your original plan that you miss the opportunities growth is trying to reveal. And once you realize growth requires change, another question naturally appears. How do you know whether you're adapting wisely or just simply just throwing in the towel, just basically giving up? Because see, that's where the distinction becomes critical. Principle number two, quitting abandons the goal, adapting protects the goal. Many people think changing the method means changing the commitment. It doesn't. A project manager can change the project schedule. A leader can change how they communicate. A business owner may change their marketing strategy. An athlete may change their training program. None of those people have abandoned the goal. They've simply adjusted the path. The destination remains the same. The route may have changed the adaptation, but quitting is something different entirely. Quitting abandons the destination. Adaptation actually protects it. Here's a lesson I want you to think about. The mission should never remain steady, but the method should remain flexible. Here's 2 actionable tips I'd love for you to experiment with. Before making a change, ask yourself whether you're changing the goal or simply changing the approach. Next one. Evaluate strategies based on outcomes, not emotional attachment. Here's my professional advice, family. Never become more committed to the method than you are to the mission. The method exists to serve the goal, not the other way around. But even after understanding the difference between the goal and the method, there's still one final question. How do you know whether the change you're considering is actually healthy? The answer lives in your motivation. Principle number 3, quitting escapes discomfort, adapting pursues progress. Oh, I'm going to listen to this one myself because this is where the real distinction lives. Both quitting and adapting involve change. Both may require walking away from something. Both may look identical from the external, or better yet, the outside, but the difference isn't the action, it's the objective. Quitting asks, how do I get away from this discomfort? Adapting asks, how do I move closer to the outcome I'm trying to achieve? Discomfort may be itself not evidence that you're on the wrong path, but sometimes discomfort is the cost of growth. Sometimes discomfort is the tuition you pay for the experience. The question isn't whether something feels difficult. The question is whether that difficulty is helping the progress or causing you to abandon what matters. Here's a lesson I want you to think about, family. Your reason for changing matters more than the change itself. Here's 2 actionable tips I'd love for you to experiment with. Before making a major change, write down exactly why you're making it. Next one, ask yourself whether the change moves you closer to progress or simply further away from the discomfort. Here's my professional advice. Growth often feels uncomfortable. But don't make the mistake that temporary discomfort for a permanent signal that you're on the wrong path. And that's what makes these principles so important. Because sooner or later, every one of us will have to face a moment where the original plan no longer fits reality. And in that moment, we'll have to decide whether we're abandoning the mission or simply finding a better way forward. Here's the final reflection, family. One of the greatest leadership lessons you'll ever learn is that the difference between being committed and being so rigid are not the same thing. Commitment is staying dedicated to whatever happened. Being rigid is refusing to change even when growth requires it. Growth will eventually require you to outgrow your old plans. Adaptation will require you to protect the goal instead of the method. And wisdom is learning the difference between escaping discomfort and pursuing progress. Because the reality is this: the strongest leaders aren't the people who never change direction. The strongest leaders are the people who never lose sight of the mission. They learn, they adjust, they evolve, they adapt, and not because they're quitting, but because they've committed enough to keep moving forward. So, next time you find yourself asking yourself a question of, should you make a change? I want you to ask yourself one simple question. Am I abandoning the goal or am I protecting it? Because quitting abandons the mission, adaptation protects it. And the leaders who create lasting success aren't the ones who refuse to change. They're the ones who refuse to stop. Your future is not determined by the path you started on. It's determined by your willingness to continue moving toward what matters most. Because sets and reps beat talent when talent doesn't do the reps. If you're new to the episode, I go by the name of ED. For all you smart and intelligent folks out there, hey, listen, that just simply means Ed. Until next time.